Hey everyone, it's Christian Harris again with another Christian's Conversations with. Today, I have the pleasure of having Sarah Weiner on with me to discuss today's job market and her experience in it and the advice she may give to everybody. So, good morning, Sarah. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
So, if you wouldn't mind giving everybody a little bit of background in your work experience and what you've been doing for the last, decade or so.
Yes, so I am in talent acquisition. Primarily, I have been internal. I do have agency experience, and that is where I started my career. But for the past five-ish years, I have been more on that internal side, having those partnerships with one company and the hiring teams there, and really being a trusted resource for them.
Well, as we kind of discussed before we started, the market is, they say it's the worst it's ever been from a job seeker perspective. It's almost like the housing market in a sense, depending on what side of the fence you're at, you control it. In the last 5 years, what do you think has changed, in that regards?
I'm not sure. I graduated college in 2008 and thought that would be the worst job market of my life being in the recession. 24 and 2025 have sadly topped that. I'm not 100% sure why I keep seeing, rifts and people being downsized and laid off. I've been in my own job search, so I've had roles paused in the middle of, the process or towards the end of the process. I assume that means those companies are going on hiring freezes as well. So even when a company thinks they're kind of turning around, they prove otherwise. And sadly, us in talent acquisition, we're kind of the litmus test. When we're getting let go, it means other jobs are, not going to be hiring. If we're getting hired, it means the company's ramping up to grow their business as well.
So, when you went to college, was being in talent acquisition like something you aspired to do? Is it just something I think like everybody else, we kind of fall in the positions unless we want to be like a doctor or a lawyer. I mean, how did you get into this type of
Yes.
field?
Honestly, I wanted to be a doctor. I started school pre-med. I hit organic chemistry and realized I was in it for the wrong reasons. I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted the paycheck. I do love helping people, but that was not my primary focus. My dad was in medical sales, so that was kind of my path that I wanted to take when I decided to switch my major from pre-med to anthropology. Did go into sales right out of college. Actually worked for a company that sold medical conferences to hospital administration. In the same building was a boutique recruitment firm. The ladies that worked there were always smiling. They were having the time of their life in the elevator. And I knew I was going to make 100+ phone calls and probably get hung up on for 85% of them. So when they had proposed, meeting with them, seeing if there was anything that they could maybe help me transition into, the conversation actually led to working with them. So that was how I got into recruiting, kind of a complete accident. Ended up actually leaving the field and going back to sales for a while, then going into administrative assistant, executive assistant type work before finding my way back to a startup, which had me doing HR. And then I kind of regained my love for recruitment. Once I was out of that boutique firm, I honestly had naively volunteered to be an on-site at FedEx SmartPost, which was our biggest client. And I ended up working 20-hour days, didn't have time to, see my family. I had just gotten a new dog that didn't even know me, was in a warehouse that had no temperature control with a quarter-mile walk to a bathroom. So that's where I decided I didn't like talent acquisition. But once I came back, I realized that was just one bad model, not the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and being the face, so you see the post being the face, kind of what when somebody doesn't get a job or get a response, they're usually. I saw one of your posts. It's like if you're gonna send me a request asking if there's a position, give me the position. It's not like I think you wrote something like, "Hey, do you have a position in New York?" I mean, you got, if you're going to reach out to somebody like yourself, be specific. I think it's awesome when you person in your position responds. I appreciate that, even if it's like, hey, we don't think you're a good fit or we don't have anything right now. It's it's being seen. I think that's extremely important for someone like myself. So we do appreciate that. I don't think you guys get the love in a sense that you should when you're kind of going what would be considered now the extra mile for people.
Thank you. Yes. And sadly, it shouldn't be considered the extra mile. It should just be the norm.
Yeah, because I think sometimes, we see the posts where someone will say, well, we're hiring for XYZ, DM me if you're interested. And I'm sure we could find just thousands of posts saying I've DM people and they don't respond. And that's the worst. Like, don't put it out there. I think if, and well, they're all busy. I imagine, I think one of your other posts mentioned like how many people have applied for positions, and it's thousands. So obviously they can't reply to everyone. So, I mean, it does make sense, but it is an interesting situation.
Yes, I believe in, responding to everybody. It may not always be the response they want, especially the people who are vague and just, do you have a job for me? Then they kind of just get told, I'm internal. I don't have, a million jobs crossing my desk. If you apply at a company that I work with, definitely let me know after you apply. I will flag your application, or if it's my role, I'll pull it up personally as soon as possible. Unfortunately, I don't have the capacity to do somebody else's job search when I'm working and doing my own search.
Because I know that the last two positions you've taken have been more of a seasonal position. I don't know if it's a contracted position. And I see more and more positions kind of going into that, what they call fractional type situation. How does that, because I've never done it. I worked at a company for 18 years. Prior to that was like almost 10. So it's like I kind of stayed where that is. But I'm actually looking at roles now similar to those. So is that, I mean, obviously there's benefits to it. What do you think those might be from a contract or a seasonal situation that might be something somebody should look at?
Yes. For me, it provided immediate relief, right? So I'd rather be working than sitting home doing nothing. Unemployment where I live is kind of a joke. If you make over $40,000 a year, you max it out, and that's $314 a week. I don't know anyone who can live off of $314 a week. So even a contract role, it may not pay what I was making permanently, and obviously there's no benefits, but it's keeping my skills current. It's giving me a sense of accomplishment for the day and allowing me to still have that human connection. So I'd encourage people to look for contract work while you're looking for your permanent job. I've taken roles, I think I've had two that were contract to hire, and it's a great way to kind of test out a new industry or an employer, see if there's a mutual fit there to move forward permanently. But even just these contract roles, a lot of the time I've been able to gain experience doing something I haven't necessarily done before. So one role was working more in high volume manufacturing. Another role that I took was in the tech space, which I've never worked on some of the roles that I've been working on over there. So definitely learning kind of a new language almost in that space. And then a third contract that I have is working with leadership positions, which have truthfully always been some of my favorite, but never something that carried a full rec load. So they'd be kind of sprinkled in, whereas now that's my primary focus.
Yeah, and I imagine the tech world's kind of keeping you busy because that's probably, I wouldn't say the number one industry that have seen the amount of rifts or layoffs or however you want to refer to them. And then with the different types of solutions that are out there to make it easier to do some of the jobs, I know that's the number one people I talk to based on my background as well as the technical people that are looking for the jobs now. In your opinion,
Yes.
being in this type of role for an extended period of time, what do you think makes someone a good talent acquisition person?
I think communication is huge, and it's an area that my industry is sadly lacking in. I believe in being as transparent as possible. I believe in always closing the loop. And it baffles me. I know I have a post out there from a day or so ago where a chief talent officer was actually promoting his team not to reply to people. He was saying, we only reply to people we deem qualified. They don't send rejection notices. If you apply and they don't want to speak with you, you just never hear back. Every leader I've had has firmly believed the exact opposite, which I am glad for because I believe the opposite. I would want to be notified if I'm not moving forward in a process, even if it's just at the application stage. And all of our ATSs send automated messages. Some it's just with that movement, others it's clicking an additional box, but we really shouldn't be so lazy we can't click a box.
Yeah, I think because one of the complaints out there is people are just applying for jobs to apply for them, which there's obviously validity into that. I mean, we're all kind of guilty in that, but without getting either notification like, hey, you may not be a good fit, and they're going to be general. I mean, I think every post says like they get that message at 12:15 in the morning saying we've decided not to move on. But if you're not even getting that, and you're seeing these positions kind of reposted. I mean, we see that, I mean, for LinkedIn, it's been reposted, and you're like, geez, I know I applied for this 6 months ago, but I didn't hear back. So I guess I'll just apply again. Because I don't know if maybe they just didn't see my resume because they've gotten so many. So I think from the end user perspective, it makes it difficult not knowing um, that they weren't a good
Yes.
fit.
Yes. And those, 12:15 in the morning rejections, most likely someone's not rejecting you at 12:15 in the morning. It's not a bot, it is a human. Most systems have delays set up. So I know like in Bamboo HR, which is one of the systems I use, I can set a delay anywhere from 12 hours to 3 days. So maybe that company set a 12-hour delay, which then looks a little wonky when you get that dispositioning in the middle of the night, but really somebody did it in the afternoon. I've also worked on the agency side where we had offshore teams who would do resume reviews for the recruiters so that they could free up some time when you were getting those, recs that had 5,000, 10,000 applicants. So somebody in India is going to be dispositioning at a different time than, somebody in Chicago, for example.
What advice would you give to somebody? So obviously, certain positions will tell you like, okay, who the talent person is, when you apply for it. Others not. So then you basically will find company A and you'll go down trying to figure out who might be, involved in that. What advice would you give somebody looking? Is it okay like to LinkedIn message them, try to find email addresses, or what recommendations would you possibly give?
Yes, I think it's okay to send LinkedIn messages. Honestly, I had a woman who did that. She applied to a role. I already had the number of interviews set that I thought I was going to need to find a candidate. She just kind of flagged her interest to me, said, I have applied. This is, kind of why I feel I'm a good fit. And I pulled up her resume and she was a good fit. So I added another interview to my calendar. She was not successful in getting the job, but she did make it through to the final round of interviews. Had she not sent me that message, I would have never even screened her because I thought I was done. So I definitely would encourage people to reach out after applying. Just flag the fact that you did, why you think you're a good fit. And most recruiters, I feel, would have the same response that I have and pull up the application and look. Um, assuming they see that message. I know a lot of them do go unread and unseen, so I can't speak to that. Some recruiters may be getting more messages than I am, and that could be part of why. But as far as like finding outside contact information, totally cool with it as long as it's a work email. I
Yeah.
have gotten phone calls on my personal phone. I have had people find my parents' phone number and call their home. Those types of things are just not okay. Honestly, that generally probably gets you blocked in the system from ever applying again.
And even, I mean, I'm like anything with the internet, I'm sure you can find out information. It's hard enough to find out sometimes work emails, because everyone's work email is
Mhm.
slightly different. And even if you use like a chat GPT, they most of the time will not tell you, the work email. It's, but I can't imagine trying to call somebody's, let alone their personal number, maybe if you found it, because you wouldn't know if it was personal or work, but then somebody's parents. Um, yeah,
Yes.
that would definitely get you blocked. What's the misconception that people expect from being in the position that you're in today?
Like misconception that I'd have or that like a candidate has about my role.
Well, we can go both. Let's go first to candidate, and then what's your personal opinion on people in this role?
I think a common misconception from candidates is that it's the recruiter kind of being the roadblock. We are not the decision maker. So after I have a screening with a candidate, I'm taking my notes, I'm taking their resume, I'm writing up a summary, and I'm sending all of that over to the hiring lead. The hiring lead is the one who's then making the decision to move forward or not. And sometimes those people are just hard to get an answer from. My general rule of thumb is 3 business days. That's kind of considered best practice. So that's what I try to stick to. And after 1 business day, I'm pinging that hiring leader saying, hey, did you see this email? Can we connect on this? If I get ignored past that 3 days, then I am putting an invite on that hiring leader's calendar and we are sitting down and we are talking about the candidates. So I think the misconception is that the recruiters are evil. It's us that's, preventing people from moving forward when we're not the ones slowing down the process. I actually had a hiring leader the other day comment that, she was amazed at how quickly I would move. And I was like, well, I'll move as fast as you do. Like, I'm not the one that, has any hiccups in the process. I want candidates on your calendar yesterday. I want to fill the role. I want to see the company productive at the fullest and, getting that seat filled. And then I think a misconception about the role once we're in it is maybe just that hiring leaders don't always have the same sense of urgency that we'd think they'd have. They complain about being too busy, about having too much work, teams being understaffed, but at the same time, some of them aren't willing to let us help them. So if you're not going to respond, it's going to slow down the process. It's going to make the team less productive. It's going to have more on your plate. When prioritizing those interviews, well, yes, it does delay the work you're currently doing. Ultimately, it speeds everything up because then you're fully staffed.
Yeah. And you're right. You could be, I mean, being in a hiring position in the past, like I could be short on my team, but I still have to hit whatever those goals are. So yes, if I was fully staffed, I'd have a better shot at it. But especially in sales, you don't have that luxury. Sometimes it's, hey, it's the end of the month. And I got to hire two people, but I also got to hit my numbers. Otherwise, there's those
Yes.
issues. So, it can be interesting sometimes how important that is.
The balancing act.
Absolutely. Yeah. Juggling all those plates at one time, as best as we can. One of the things I noticed from your posts is your willingness to help people, and that's the great part about like having these conversations that I've had so far is everyone that, out there is willing to help however we can. Why is that important to you that to do that for people?
Maybe it's the way I was raised, I'm not sure, but I've always believed if you see something that's wrong, speak up. If you can lend a hand, do so, even if it's, something small like opening a door for somebody at the grocery store. So I just kind of have always believed in giving back and doing whatever I can for others. I also think in this job market, especially, it's like you said, just really hard to be seen. So if there's anything we can do to help the next person, I'm happy to do that. There's also a ton of myths surrounding talent acquisition, what ATSs do and don't do, what is AI, what is a human. So I kind of just want to make the whole process a little more friendly. And, pulling back that veil can sometimes help do that. I know I've given walkthroughs on, what we see in an ATS or how to make an application quicker. A lot of people hate Workday. Workday happens to be my favorite ATS I have ever worked in. So it's always a little disheartening to hear somebody, you know, kind of piling onto the I hate Workday train. But one of the biggest gripes I always hear about that is it takes me 30 minutes to apply. I've never taken more than 2 or 3 minutes to apply to any Workday job. So I've been able to give people some behind the scenes looks at how to make that process faster. The EEO surveys are also another thing that I hear a lot of people questioning. Do we see if somebody is male or female, if they have a disability, if they're a veteran? No company I've ever worked at has revealed those surveys to me. I don't believe any company is telling their talent acquisition team the answers to that. I think it's more a demographic survey that HR can pull to show, okay, well, we have this percent of applicants from this bucket, this from this bucket, not to prevent someone from getting a job.
Yeah, and it is funny because certain, depending on what system they're using, the question, those type of things will come up differently. Or I've had a handful that will, you may not fill that out, and then you get the link afterwards, like, hey, to complete your application, and then you're like, I thought I put that information in, but maybe I didn't. So you
Right.
just kind of have to go back and do it. When I first started this process, because I hadn't had to put a resume together, kind of go through this back in my, in my day, we'd just go down to a job fair in a sense. Stack of resumes, you'd be talked to, and if you did well, you kind of moved on. I wasn't familiar with ATS. Now I am. Is it I don't know if that's the right question. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? It's just something you have to deal with, right? I mean, in today's world.
Yeah, and ATS is really just a big filing cabinet. Like you said, back, I mean, in my first recruiting job, same thing. We'd go to job fairs, we'd collect stacks of resumes, and then we were putting them in a filing cabinet. Now that filing cabinet is just virtual. So the ATS allows us to do searches. They're not filtering by keywords to, knock somebody out right away. There are, yes, knockout questions. Those are typically things along the lines of, do you need sponsorship? Are you eligible to work in the US? When they're asking salary, that could be a knockout. I've had, um, an applicant say that they wanted 3 times what we had available for salary. So in a situation like that, we can't be flexible. I generally will talk to someone if they're within 10 or 20% of the role, depending on what the pay scale is there, and just see if they're, negotiable at all versus just discrediting somebody. But when you want $300,000 for a job that pays 80,000, there's not much I can do. So something like that would be a knockout question. And it's not necessarily a knockout where the system sends you a rejection right away, but we review those questions as we're reviewing applicants because it's a quick way for us to find if someone's a fit or not. Same thing with, location. If it's an on-site job in Dallas, Texas, and you're from Denver, Colorado, and you don't put any kind of relocation plan, I'm just assuming you thought it was a remote job. And unfortunately, that's where the conversation kind of ends. So an ATS isn't as evil as people want it to be. It's literally like the file cabinet sitting behind me, just electronic.
Yeah, no, I said, and you're right. It's just a system that the good and the bad about technology. It does make your life easier as a talent acquisition person, but in our minds, I guess, from the outside looking in, we think it's used to block or
Mm-hmm.
prevent us. So then it's trying to again, we see the post. We'll make sure you have the keywords, and now it seems like with what's available to the people, it's, well, if you use Chat GPT or AI too much, then it's a negative now, right? You have to be personal, but you want to make sure you hit the words, so, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you
Yeah.
don't.
And the way that I'd suggest keywords is more along the lines of like softwares. So that's typically where I'm doing a keyword search. If a hiring manager says somebody needs to know how to use Confluence, I might search and just see whose resume says Confluence on it. If your resume doesn't mention it, I'm assuming you haven't used it. And if that is a must have for the job, then that keyword's kind of weeding you out, but it's not the system pulling a keyword. It's me doing almost like a Google search
Yeah.
for that keyword. Or like I'm contracting with an insurance company that works within Medicare right now. We had a product analyst. Well, that person has to have experience with Medicare enrollment. If your resume doesn't say Medicare enrollment, I'm probably not going to be interviewing you because that is a major requirement for us. So, yes, you want keywords, but no, it's not like you need to match the job description 100% with your keywords and have it overfilled with just buzzwords, because what we're looking for is generally something more along the lines of a piece of software versus some kind of a, soft skill. We are assessing those soft skills and that culture fit in every step of our interview process. So you don't have to worry about necessarily listing, that you communicated with various departments. We're trusting that you probably did that. You can put cross functional collaboration, and then we kind of know what goes into it. Not saying, I sent this many emails per day or whatever along those lines. So I think that's another misconception that people have had where I kind of then show them how those keyword searches work. Same thing if somebody says, hi, my name's Bob Smith. I applied for your job. I'm doing a keyword search to look for Bob Smith.
Understand. So the fact that you look for talent for a living and then are looking more for a permanent role for yourself, how do you, in a sense, split your time, to think one way instead of the other way for yourself? Like, how do you make a difference for yourself to make this process, I wouldn't say easier, but more doable in a sense?
Luckily, I am a morning person, so I am usually up somewhere between 4:30 and 5 in the morning, and I will look for roles on LinkedIn for myself and kind of while I'm still laying in bed scrolling, save the ones that I know I want to apply to for that day. And then I can do that on a lunch break or after work, before work. I also, being in talent acquisition, am on LinkedIn probably more than your average person. I'm having conversations throughout the day, both with candidates for the roles I'm filling, as well as people reaching out to me about potential roles and me trying to network with hiring leaders for the roles that I've applied to. And then I also set alerts. If there's a company I'm really interested in, I will set a job alert. I have one with Thermo Fisher because I had a conversation with some of their hiring team earlier in the year regarding a role as a sourcer there. And we just kind of determined true talent acquisition is a better fit for me than simply sourcing. So I have an hourly alert. Every hour, I get an email from their system saying what jobs are open. That way, as soon as something in talent acquisition opens, I can reach back out to the people I interviewed with and, express that I am still interested in keeping my eye on their company.
With job alerts, which I think are awesome, can you have too many, do you think?
Yes, I've definitely turned some off. There are better sources than others. There's one called, I think it's Aura. I don't know that I've gotten a single job that actually matches what I put into the search. I will get things from all over the country, even though, I don't live in Texas. I don't live in California. I'm in Wisconsin. I'm actually in a fairly rural part of Wisconsin, so remote is really best for me. Otherwise, I likely have 90-minute or more commute to an office, which I don't feel is fair to a candidate either, because then I feel I'm a worse employee saying I'm only working my 40 hours and I'm not available for interviews outside of standard business hours. Where right now I prefer to make myself available so that a working candidate could also get on my calendar without altering their workday. So, yes, you can have too many, but I think more so in the sense of just not a good quality output, not saying that you're seeing too many jobs necessarily.
And on those types of systems, like everything else, you get what you put in, right? So you're not, so
Mhm.
for someone like myself, you know, if you just put, I want to be in sales, well, yeah, you're going to get sales for everything. It could be, you know, and
Mhm.
how the companies put that information in also affects that, you know, because customer service in theory could be sales.
Mhm.
But that, you know, if you're,
Talent acquisition could be sales in a way.
yeah, I mean, so it really is dependent on what the end user puts in to get the best
Yes.
information. So you're not searching through jobs that you have no interest in. You're still going to get some. I mean, it's like everything else, but the more you can
Right.
put in, the better quality you can put in, the less likely that is. And you can spend it looking at stuff you truly want or are interested in.
Yes.
One of your posts mentioned, and I thought it was great, especially because I've kind of been in the same industry since I left college, pivoting. You know, you're asked, I think somebody asked you if you were willing to pivot, and you gave a response that said, no, not at this time, based on where the market is. And I could 100% agree with it. Like right now, there's so many people out there looking for jobs. And if you try to go something fresh in a sense, and you might be really good at it, but if somebody has years of experience, it makes it difficult for you to get that. Do you get that a lot where people are just saying, hey, I'm willing to do anything just to get my foot in the door?
Yes. And like you kind of mentioned, I've pivoted before in my career. I went from sales to talent acquisition to honestly back to sales, then operations, admin work, HR, back to talent acquisition. So I've done it. I've done it when the economy was healthy, when people were willing to look at transferable skills. Right now, I'm going to speak to talent acquisition numbers. There's over 170,000 talent acquisition professionals looking for work right now. It's a difficult market for sure. I would not suggest somebody who, necessarily was in sales trying to pivot to talent acquisition just because when there's 170,000 people with those skills already applying for the jobs, and I believe I read a stat that there's only one job open right now for every 220 recruiters looking, which is scary. If that's the ratio, why would they, why would you take me as a project manager when yes, I've managed projects, but I'm not certified. I've never done that as a job title. Why would you give me that chance when there's 220 people for that one job opening that are qualified? And then even broader, there's 170,000 if it's remote that could do that job and have those skills. Why take a chance on somebody? Now, it might be different if you have a personal connection at that company and they can vouch for you, then yes, pivoting would work. But if you're just blind applying, it's probably not so likely. I know I had, and this was back when the economy was healthy, I had an HR generalist posted when I was with iHeartMedia, and we had 3,000 applicants in a day, which is insane. And I honestly, most of those applicants were not qualified. I'd say under 10% in the end, when I closed that role, had been qualified applicants. There's certain industries where everybody thinks they can do that job. Another huge one is an admin assistant. An admin assistant is a lot harder than I ever thought it was. When I first became one, I thought the same thing. Who can't answer a phone and send an email? Well, coordinating calendars and playing that game of Tetris can be beyond challenging. Then if you're working with a global team and, having to coordinate all of that, it's tough. Your average Walmart cashier cannot do that, even though they think they can. And truthfully, if I opened an admin role right now, I would probably have over 800 applicants in the first hour it was open. And probably five of them would really be qualified.
Yeah, I think it really doesn't, from an outside perspective, it really doesn't matter the position. Everyone thinks, oh, that job must be easy. I could do that in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, an admin role would be insane because you are running somebody's, in a sense, what they're doing on a daily basis, and you have to make sure they're where they're supposed to be and all that. You know, it's like herding cats in a sense. People that are good at it, it's like everything else. If you're good at it, that's why they get, in theory, they get paid well as you work your way up, and that's why a lot of those people will
Mm-hmm.
stay with that same individual as they move up the corporate ladder because they work well together, and that's
Yes.
that's half of the battle, right? It's having that
Mm-hmm. That
But
partnership.
yeah, but I think every role, it's like people that if you've never done sales, it's stressful. You can make really good money, but it's not for everyone. But that is true with, I said, any position out there. Uh, but like over time, if you get somebody in a new role, they can get good at it. But as a hiring person, like you said, do you take a chance with somebody new? Everyone's going to have a ramp up. I always said when I was hiring or took on a new role, 6 months to a year to get comfortable in a new position. It could be just switching from what we call mid-market to enterprise. It's the
Mhm.
same for the most part, same job, but you got to build those relationships. You got to do X, Y, Z. 6 months to a year. Well, if you're in sales, you still got to hit quotas and the like during that time frame. But if you were brand new to sales, it would take you long. Actually, it wouldn't take you longer because 9 times out of 10, most of those people dropped out because it was just too much. It was overwhelming.
Yes.
And I think that's true in most positions. If we were watching TV shows, I would say with my wife, character development, same similar situation. You have to develop the role. The good managers will allow you that time if they see the potential. The bad ones typically will cut bait as quickly as they can because like, oh, I don't have time to teach them everything. The problem there though too is if you don't take the time with that person, all you're doing is rehiring, and that's kind of what you run into with all these reposts. Like I'll see these positions, especially in sales, like we're hiring this, and we'd have it in certain markets. The turnover was just like, as soon as they get out of training, get out of ramp, boom, they were leaving for another position because it was hard work and they were like, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And a lot of that had to do with
Yep.
poor management as well. But yes, the one thing I notice in a lot of posts, unfortunately, is because of the market and the stress people are, it's people like yourself, letting everyone know, hey, we're here for you to, if you're struggling. And it's disheartening in a sense, but, people are going through tough, tough times and, either they don't feel they have that support. So I think it's awesome that people like yourself and other people, are letting them know, hey, if you need somebody to talk to, because I don't think people that aren't going through this truly understand how stressful it can be, especially, if you've been doing it a while.
Yes. And it has definitely given me a new outlook as well, to bring into my work where before, we always kind of knew about layoffs, but for the first time ever, I'm seeing, I've been without work for 2 years. I've been without work for 3 years. I'm living in my car. I'm at the end of my rope. And that's just, it's terrifying for the candidate. It's heartbreaking for me to read. If I had an ability to put everyone back to work, I gladly would. I don't believe most of these people are out of work due to any fault of their own. So I believe they deserve, compassion and that kind of shoulder to lean on. So it's just, going through those struggles and being ghosted myself or not ever hearing anything after an application. It's just made me really want to emphasize putting a good candidate experience out for everyone who applies to any role that I'm working on.
Yeah. And the people that are good, not just at their jobs, but it's probably bad to say this, but good people will do that because I reached out to a person in your position for a job and sent them the message and they were great. They responded. They said, the position's really on the East Coast. It did say remote, but it's really more for East Coast based. But he's like, hey, if something opens up in the West Coast, I'll let you know. And I said, yeah, I appreciate you just responding, just to let
Mhm.
and I won't bother, in a sense, bother him. And he's like, so I appreciate doing because a lot of people aren't doing that. He's like, well, I just kind of got out of that similar position, so I understand, and I think that's kind of what helps too. Is if you've had to experience this in the last 2-3 years, you realize what people truly are going through, and
Mhm.
you do that. Like I said, it shouldn't be an extra step, or it wasn't back in the day, but it is now.
Yeah. The human has found itself out of the human resources equation somehow.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that has to do with the businesses, right? Because back in the, I worked for a large company, and at the end, I couldn't even, which may not be a bad thing, I couldn't even probably tell you who my HR rep was, but early on in my career, I could because, we'd have our meetings or they would attend a meeting, once a quarter and say, hey, this is your HR rep. If you ever need them, here they are. I said, it also
Yeah.
could be a good thing I never had to reach out to them too. So
Probably.
it depends on how you want to look at that. A recent post, I think you might have done it this morning. So I'm guessing softball is your outlet, to kind of break up
Yes.
the monotony. What position do you play?
I play infield. I am truthfully the second oldest on my team right now, so I will try to just catch or if possible and let the younger girls run around. I was a catcher growing up playing fast pitch,
Oh,
so
okay.
definitely most comfortable for me now that I'm playing slow pitch. Just don't put me in the outfield, at least not if you want to win a game.
Don't make me run. I can do everything else.
No, or judge a ball. I lose it when it starts to peak, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, now I don't have time to react.
Yeah, no, is it a co-ed or women's league?
I primarily play women's. I play maybe 3 co-ed tournaments a year. We actually have, I live in Wisconsin, so we have a dome where we get to play indoor in the winter, and that's when I play a little bit more of the co-ed, and it's a little bit more fun versus serious.
Oh, okay, so it's still so the tradition your league is fairly serious. It's not I mean it's fun, but we're out
Yes.
there to win.
Yes, so I stopped playing like the bar leagues because the rules were terrible, the pitching was terrible, and then umpires were like, "Well, you play tournaments, like you can hit anything." It's like, "Well, no, I play a zone where like they actually have to throw it as a strike, not you hit anything." So I just play like travel tournaments now, which I have a great group of teammates who, almost like it's cliche, but they become family because we spend most weekends together and we're on the road in hotels and um, just kind of living it up, traveling the country on the weekends.
That is awesome. Yeah, I mean, sports will do that for you. Whether I coached my kids through, they're all grown up now, but like basically till they're 18, and we did tournaments across California. We went to Hawaii. We played in lots of different places, but that group of people does become, in a sense, your family, good or bad. You know,
Right.
because you're with them, 4 times a week pretty much, and then on weekends in small hotels, gathering dinners and all that. But I said that's an awesome outlet to have, and I think that's people mention that like having these outlets, because this now does become a really 7-day a week job trying to find a
Mhm.
job. And you mentioned, I think your mom reached out to you and like, because you have to put on, we all do to a sense, happy go lucky, hey, grinding, grinding, grinding. But those quiet moments, I won't say alone, but outside where people can't really see, you have to have someone like your mom or someone, anyone like that, where they truly, open up and share what you're going through. Because I think that makes a difference too. Helps you get through that day in a sense when you have those
Yes.
rough days. So that's awesome to hear. Let me see what is there any advice? I mean, I guess what's the because more and more people are going through what we're going through in a sense. And from, I mean, you would know better than me. It's about a 18 to 24 month period in a sense, right? To get like probably a similar job what you're looking for. I mean, we hopefully you can find a job before then, but if you're truly trying to get in the same field, you may be, on the bench for a while. What's the advice you'd give to people?
Don't lose hope. I know it's definitely hard, but just like every other time in our life when we've searched for work, eventually it comes. This time it's just taking a little bit longer. I would say being seen is probably the biggest hurdle right now just because of the sheer number of applicants for every single role. So, do something to stand out, reach out, network, leverage connections. Honestly, I've had better success tapping on strangers. Someone who sends a random message, we connect, but we're not actually friends outside of the platform. We've never met face to face. But I found people who have gone through the same thing are generally a little bit more willing to go, like you said, that extra mile. So I've had people, share a post or send a message to a connection of theirs just saying, "Hey, I've never worked with her, but I've seen posts she's made. I've spoken with her. I think she'd be a good asset to your team. She is interested." Kind of flagging my name, sending a resume. And that's basically how I got one of my contracts. A local talent acquisition leader in Milwaukee had shared one of my posts, and someone in his network said, you know, we have a contract. It's probably not paying what you were making, but it's something if you're interested. And that was one of the best teams I've ever worked with.
No, I agreed that reach out to people you don't know. So I've reached out to, I think we went to the same college, and he worked at a company I was looking at, hit him up, and he responded and we talked. He actually, took the time. We talked for about 15 minutes, and he said, we don't have anything. I don't have anything right now, but I think, based on your history, let me make a couple introductions. I'm like, fantastic. So he set that up and followed through, set that up. I think I talked to the CRO and another person the next week. And, I'm still in, talks about possibly joining their teams. And, he's followed up with me. He's like, hey, how's it going? And first question people have asked, like, hey, how long have you known Jerry? I'm like, to be honest, I just met him. I mean, we just had a good, we kind of similar, see, enjoy soccer, went same college from California. I mean, so it was fantastic, but this was somebody I did not know. So I agree, reaching out to people, putting yourself out there, which is the toughest thing for anybody.
Yes.
Because no one likes rejection. And you know what? I'd rather be rejected right now than no response. I think most people would agree with that too.
Yes.
Yeah. Reject me. Tell me I'm no good. That's fine. The
Or
ghost.
even just that the position closed before you saw my resume. Just say something.
Yeah. On, I guess the one question. So being the fact that everyone applies, like, 1,000 people have applied within an hour. The new hack, everyone, well, I shouldn't say everyone. I think it's great. One of my interviews told me, you change you do the last 24 hours in LinkedIn and you change that to 3,600 and it gets you the last hour. In your opinion, does it make a difference if you're like, say, within the first 10 people to apply to a position, or there's 1,000 people and you're just in the middle of it? Does it even make a difference in your opinion?
Yes.
Okay.
Primarily because, as the recruiter, I'm doing those screenings where if I have one job open, I'm probably screening 10 to 15 people, maybe stretching to 20 if, the role has that many applicants and I have the bandwidth to go that far. So as soon as I hit 10, I'm done scheduling interviews. Then I'll shortlist other candidates where I kind of hold them for consideration. If my first 10 don't work out, then, these are the next wave and so on and so forth. But if I've hit those 10 and maybe I hit them after looking at 200 applications and your application 305, you're just in that second wave. That's why I said earlier when that woman had reached out to me, I wasn't looking for more applicants, but because she reached out and she flagged her name, I went and said, okay, like now I kind of have a personal connection to you. I've spoken with you. I can't just say, oh, well, we're set. I didn't have anyone in final interview stages at that point. So she was still within the time frame to get in for that initial screening. She would have just been left in the batch had she not done that. So, yes, timing does play into it, especially if you're not going to go a step above and start networking and trying to be seen by that company. You don't want to just miss your shot because you do have the qualifications, but 10 people applied before you that also did.
Yeah. Good advice. I agree. That's one reason it makes this like where it's 24/7 job, right? Because it is
Mm-hmm.
timing. Like when you get those alerts, if you can, don't put it off till, tomorrow to apply.
Right.
If it just got posted. So no, that's great advice.
Yeah. I mean, it's not saying that, like, if you see 100 people had applied, I'm not saying don't apply by any means because those 100 could all be completely unqualified for all
Yeah.
we know. And LinkedIn also lies about the number of people who have applied. I found that out when I posted a role, and LinkedIn, we didn't pay to sponsor the role, so we just got the free version and they take it down after so many people click apply. Well, LinkedIn was telling me we had 55 people who applied to our role. I only had 30 in my ATS. So 55 people did not apply through LinkedIn, not even 20 applied through LinkedIn. So LinkedIn fabricates their numbers as well.
Yeah, everyone likes to I guess inflate their numbers
Mhm.
for whatever the purpose, but I'm sure there's a reason for those things.
And that could just simply be people who clicked apply but didn't actually go through and apply. Maybe they just wanted to see more details. But LinkedIn saying anyone who clicks apply did apply,
Yeah.
not taking into consideration, they ask you, did you apply, yes or no? If I'm saying yes, then count me as an applicant. If I'm saying no or not selecting it, don't count me as an applicant.
Oh, great. Well, I appreciate your insights. I said this is for anyone unfortunately having to experience this, like I said, don't give up hope as much as it hurts sometimes. Find an outlet outside of looking all the time, whether, and a lot of times I think it's, some sort of physical activity, whether it be exercise, just getting outside, do something to break it up, reach out to former coworkers. I think that's a big miss too sometimes if
Mhm.
is you don't do that. I was in the area where my corporate office was the other day doing something, and I was going to go visit, and then I didn't just because they had meetings, but it's like, okay, I'm in the area, maybe not make it special, but let's go see the old faces. I think that helps. So
Yes.
I know we're all busy, so I do appreciate it. I think been on here for almost an hour. So thank you very much for doing this, sharing your insights. I think it'll be helpful to people to get your insights as what you experience from a talent acquisition person, then let them know what you're going through. Um, and I think, you're doing wonderful work by, helping people understanding how to get through the ATS or just understanding what it is so that, they don't think it's just this horrible machine.
Yes, and I promise I'm your bot. There's not a bot out there dispositioning you. It's a human. And if you haven't heard, you're likely one of those unfortunate candidates who does have the right experience. You're just kind of in that almost purgatory state where you just applied at the wrong time and we had our first wave, so you probably don't hear then until the role closes that we don't need additional candidates. But sometimes the delay in the notification is simply just that. Other times it's really just that the company doesn't notify people. But I promise if you apply to a role that I'm working on, if you haven't heard, that's what it is. It's you do have the right experience, just the wrong timing.
Well, I appreciate it. And for everybody out there, we appreciate you giving us that understanding. So we just don't think we suck so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
No, thank you and best of luck in the future.
Thank you. Bye bye.